talk to me about how Gen Z is processing this moment that we're in, because there was a lot of enthusiasm and excitement in Gen Z for something different this year and did not happen. Um, so give me some perspective on where you think Gen Z is at
Well,
right
I think
now.
my perspective is different than a lot of the Gen Z. I think that, well, we did see a giant shift to the right among Gen Z, especially young men like myself. And you know what? And there's a part of me that I understand why people feel that, like, they're a fan of the Doge cuts. They're a fan of seeing funding get slashed from the federal government because, well, our generation, we've been faced with astronomical. The price of rent is insane. Grocery prices are high. Gas prices are high. And it seems really hard to get a job out here. I know some of my friends are, UCLA grads struggling to find a decent paying job that doesn't compare to the same pay at In-N-Out or McDonald's. So when faced with all of that, I think it feels good when we see someone like Elon Musk come in with, effectively, well, literally, he showed up at CBAC with a chainsaw. But the way they view it as, well, if they're cutting this funding from the federal government, that's our tax dollars paying for that. So we're going to see some of that money back. However, I think they're falling for, those cuts are not going to happen in that way. The cuts are just going to come to Medicare, Social Security, and rich people's taxes. And we're not going to see that money back.
I think they should prepare themselves for disappointment in that
Definitely.
front,
Definitely.
because it is. I mean, I do think there was a cliche that, Gen Z is all far left. They're about climate, LGBT, but you're absolutely right to point out that the economic distress of Gen Z has pushed a lot of younger men toward the right, because they're not getting solutions from the Democratic Party that they felt like were serious, or that honored, where they are in the world right now.
Yeah, and so even though the Democratic policies are better for uh, lower income, middle class, basically everyone other than the upper echelon tax bracket, yeah, it's this. I think a lot of young people view the Democratic Party as just weak and incompetent, and not fighting. They have no streamlined messaging. They seem helpless. Even though when Republicans were, and this is me speaking just from an emotional perspective. Uh, I understand why people are frustrated with the Democrats. Having said that, there's a giant disinformation war happening online on YouTube. Right wing dominates the talking, or they dominate the airwaves in both traditional media and in social media. So we have no other than, your voice is great. I try to do the same thing, other people as well, but there we are being outnumbered, and it's hard to fight against.
It does feel like there's a lot of artillery on the other
Mm-hmm.
side about on messaging. And I mean, look, I'm 61 years old, so I get that I'm in a significantly different generation. But I mean, I can't imagine how the Gen Z voters and Gen Z folks felt like when they saw the Democrats' rapid response team. The average age was like 74 years old. I'm so like, come on, come on,
It's
people.
too
It's
Yeah, it's too old, and yet I don't have a problem with old. I think old people. I was a huge fan of Biden. I was one of the few Gen Z people who
Mhm.
rode with him all the way until he got pushed out
Right.
of the race. But I think, again, and then there's the problem, right? That you have someone like AOC who's a fighter and she's giving the right message, but again, she's also very far to the left, which is alienating to a lot of people. And it's like, we need a hybrid who has the AOC energy, but is in the middle somewhere that can bring people together versus alienating them based on policies.
I think a lot of the policy stuff the Democrats are very in love with, it doesn't feel to younger voters. I've seen some of this in focus groups. It doesn't feel to younger voters like the response is often like, "Yeah, okay, that's important, but I'm still getting screwed financially, and I don't have a pathway to prosperity." I've read a focus group thing, and a young guy who had voted for Trump. They were asking him why. He's like, everybody tells me go out, get a job, get married, buy a house, have kids. It's the greatest thing in the world. He goes, I can't even do the first part in the world as it is right now. So I do think that's why there's a sort of lure to that, like easy solution stuff on the right. because the solutions on the left are not connecting with those younger voters, and in my view, at
I
least.
agree that the right is able to weaponize the economic discontent very effectively, even though they don't have solutions
Hmm.
to it. Versus the Democrats are proposing
Right.
status quo policies, which are actually good in theory, but nobody's feeling the benefits. And even there was a Politico report that just came out that said actually that the real numbers of the economy are not as good as how the Democrats were quote unquote fooled into campaigning on. Somewhere along the lines of 23% of the population was experiencing some level of unemployment